This happened last month. I'm 32 years old and just started freelancing. After a messy breakup, I needed a quiet place to work. I thought this apartment would be perfect. It was cheap, close to cafes, and offered a peaceful environment. I usually worked late into the night, just me and the glow of my computer screen. I can't shake what happened next. I set up a security camera for peace of mind. At first, everything seemed normal. I was getting into my routine. I heard the creaks of the building and ignored them. The nights were quiet and I liked that. But then, one night I was reviewing the footage when I saw it. A shadowy figure lingering in the hallway outside my apartment. At first, I thought it might be my eyes playing tricks on me after working so late. I brushed it off and turned off the screen. The next night, the footage showed the figure again. My heart raced as I watched it inch closer to my door. I wanted to convince myself it wasn't real, that I was just imagining it. Then one night, I woke up to loud knocking. It was thunderous, echoing in the empty hallway. I sat up, heart racing. Maybe it was just a random person? I decided to check it out. I opened my door slowly, expecting to see someone standing there, but the hallway was empty. Just silence. I felt a chill run down my spine, but there was nothing unusual. I looked both ways, but saw no one. It felt strange, almost like something invisible was there, just out of sight. Days passed, but the unease clung to me. I didn't see the figure again, but I could feel its presence in my gut. My eyes kept drifting to the security footage. I felt watched, even more so after what happened next. A few nights later, I was deep in work. The room was dark, lit only by my screen. Suddenly, I heard tapping. It was faint at first, but then it turned into persistent pounding. I froze. My heart raced again as I glanced at the camera feed. It showed the hallway, but I didn't see the figure, just shadow and light. I stood up, thinking maybe I just had a bad dream. The tapping continued. I felt hot and cold at the same time. I grabbed the camera and moved it toward the door. I didn't know what to do. I slipped out into the hallway, scanning the area. It was too quiet. I felt like I was in the wrong place, like I had entered a different world or dimension. I half expected to find someone, but the space felt empty. The nightly events continued. It was almost a routine. Then, one evening, I looked at the security footage again, and there it was. The figure stood right in front of my door, just staring. I couldn't breathe. Every fiber in my body screamed at me to leave. What if it was real? What if it was watching me? But I didn't move. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still out there. Something that wasn't just a trick of the light. What if it never left? I struggled to concentrate on work after seeing that figure. The screen seemed dimmer, and the shadows in my apartment felt to loom closer. I needed a distraction, so I moved to the small dining table by the window. The faint streetlights outside cast a dull glow, and I tried to focus on a project, but my mind drifted back to what I had seen. I decided I could no longer ignore my neighbor, Mrs. Thomas. Maybe she would know something about the building. I remembered she was an elderly woman, always quick to share stories about the place. I hoped talking to her would help ease the dread creeping up my spine. I knocked gently on her door. After a few moments, I heard shuffling, and the door opened a crack. Her tired eyes peered out. "Oh, hello, dear," she said, her voice a soft creak. "What brings you here?" I forced a smile and explained. I mentioned the strange noises and the figure I had seen on the footage. "Do you ever notice anything odd around here?" I asked, hesitating. Her brow furrowed. "Odd? No, not really. The building can be a bit noisy at times. I suppose that's just the creaks of an old structure." I pressed further, searching for reassurance. "What about the other tenants? Have they ever mentioned anything strange?" Mrs. Thomas shook her head. "People keep to themselves. It's a quiet building, but, well, there was something peculiar a while back. Someone went missing. It was all very hush-hush." A chill ran through me. "Missing? Do you know who it was?" Her eyes darted down the hall, and she lowered her voice to a whisper. "His name was Mark. I remember he lived on this floor. No one knew much about him, but they say he was troubled. When he disappeared, the police never found out what happened. I felt a knot form in my throat. Is it possible he stayed here? I couldn't shake the thought that the figure might have something to do with this, Mark. I wouldn't worry too much, dear. People come and go, she said. But the way her voice wavered told me she wasn't completely convinced. I thanked her and walked back to my apartment, my heart heavy. Maybe I wasn't just imagining things after all. After another restless night filled with anxiety and paranoia, I decided to check the footage again. This time, I cranked the brightness up to see if I could catch anything more, a detail that might explain the presence. I stared at the screen, hoping for a sign of my imagination playing tricks, but what I saw froze me in place. The figure was closer than before. Its face was hidden, yet its eyes seemed to reflect a faint light, watching. Suddenly, it began to move. Just as it turned, the screen went black. The power cut out, plunging my apartment into darkness. My breathing quickened. I fumbled for my phone to light the way, but I didn't want to look at the door. That's when I heard it, a soft whisper drifting from the hallway. Let me in. Fear gripped me as I realized I was no longer alone. I stood frozen in the dark, my heart racing at the whisper. The silence that followed felt oppressive, almost heavy. I forced myself to breathe slowly, steady my nerves. This couldn't be real. Let me in. The voice was softer now, like a gust of wind brushing past my ear. I couldn't shake the feeling that it was coming from right outside my door. I took a step back, my back hitting the cold wall behind me. Who's there? I called out, my voice nearly quivering. There was no answer, only the faint creak of the floorboards in the hallway. I wished I had someone, anyone, with me in that moment. I remembered Mrs. Thomas's warning about Mark. Had he somehow returned? The thought terrified me more than the darkness. I turned on my phone's flashlight and pointed it toward the door as if it could shield me from whatever waited outside. I took a cautious step forward to peer through the peephole, hoping to see nothing unusual. But when I looked, my breath caught again. A shadow moved. It stood just out of sight, shrouded in darkness. I couldn't see its features, just the outline, almost like it was waiting for me to open the door. I backed away slowly, my mind racing. The last thing I wanted was to meet whatever was outside. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, but the call dropped. My heart sank. Then I heard another whisper, a bit more insistent this time. Let me in, please. I wanted to scream, to bolt for the nearest exit, but all I could do was stand there, paralyzed by fear. I thought about the security footage, how the figure had been behind me, closer than I liked. What if it had been watching me all along? Suddenly, I remembered the security camera. If I could access the saved footage on my phone, maybe I could see if the figure was still in the building. I rushed to my laptop, praying the power outage wouldn't affect the backup. My hands trembled as I opened the app. When it loaded, I scrolled through the footage, fast-forwarding through mundane clips of the hallway until I found the time I saw the figure. My heart raced as I hit play. What I saw made me gasp. The figure stood in the corner of the hallway, head tilted back as if gazing at my door. I couldn't hear the whisper now, but its posture sent chills down my spine. It lingered there, motionless, before suddenly taking a step closer. Just before it vanished from the frame, it turned, and for the first time I caught a glimpse of its face, a hollow void where features should have been. In that moment, dread twisted in my gut. I glanced back at my door. The whispering returned, more urgent, almost desperate. Let me in! I stumbled back, nearly tripping over my chair. I had to do something. So I grabbed the nearest heavy object, a vase from the table, and readied myself, heart pounding, for whatever might come through that door. Then came a loud knock, echoing through the silence. Open up! A voice demanded, gruff and unyielding. My heart raced as I hesitated. Who was it? Was someone else in danger too? Or was this part of it? As I clutched the vase tightly, I knew I couldn't stay silent for long. I took a steadying breath, my fingers tightening around the vase. The knock came again, louder this time. I said, "Open up!" Something about the voice felt familiar, almost like a twisted echo of safety. Was it really someone who could help? But after what I'd just seen, trusting anyone felt impossible. "Who are you?" I called out, my voice shaky yet defiant. "Just a neighbor. Are you okay?" The response was urgent but tinged with confusion. A hint of relief flooded my veins. Maybe it was just a misunderstanding. Still, another part of me shivered at the thought of exposing myself to whoever stood outside. I glanced again at the door, then back at the security footage. The figure, what I'd seen in the clip, hung vividly in my mind. I couldn't let it downplay my instincts. "I need your name," I shouted, my voice echoing in the stillness. A pause followed, and my heart skipped. "It's John," he replied, uncertainty creeping into his tone. I saw a light on and wanted to check in. I lowered the vase slightly, still unsure. "John, are you alone?" "Yeah, I live 2 doors down. Please, just open the door. I heard something strange outside." His words dripped with urgency, but I remained rooted in place. Just then, the whisper returned, laced with something sinister. "Let me in." The hair on my arms stood on end. I lifted the vase again, holding it like a weapon. "Stay back," I yelled, half hoping it would deter whatever was outside, half terrified to let this John in. "I'm not going to hurt you," he insisted, his voice rising. "I just want to help." Then I heard a sudden crash from a few floors above, something tumbling down, echoing in the stairwell. As I flinched, the whisper intensified. "Let me in!" Suddenly, I realized the knocking had stopped. The door loomed in front of me, isolated in the dark. Doubt began to creep in. Was this John still out there? Or had he vanished, just like the figure in the hallway? I thought about the footage again. A chilling possibility crossed my mind. What if I wasn't truly alone? A quick glance around the room confirmed it. Everything was still. My only companion, the hum of the refrigerator in the back. But the heaviness in the air started to shift. I had to resolve this. I crept toward the door, clenching the vase tightly, bracing for whatever revelation awaited me. "John, are you still there?" I called, forcing my voice to remain steady. Silence. The only sound was the deep echo of my own breath. As I stood there, listening intently, I heard a faint rustling behind me. I turned slowly, my heart dropping. That's when I saw it, another shadow moving in the corner of the room. I barely had time to process it when a chill surged down my spine. The vase slipped from my fingers and shattered on the floor. What was happening? I needed to move, but I was frozen again, staring into the dark, the whispering growing louder still. "Let me in." In that instant, I knew I had to face whatever was coming, whatever it was lurking in my home. I took a step forward, heart pounding in my chest, ignoring the creeping terror that consumed me. Then the lights flickered, and everything went dark. The darkness swallowed everything, leaving me disoriented. I blinked rapidly, hoping my eyes would adjust, but all I could sense was the pressing silence and that relentless whisper, echoing, "Let me in." My heart raced, and I fought the urge to scream. I stumbled back, my foot crunching on the shards of the broken vase. It was a small pain, but it pulled me deeper into reality. I was here, in my home, alone. No, not alone. Something was here with me. I reached out, blindly searching for the wall. My fingers grazed the rough surface, and I felt my way toward the nearest light switch. I hit it, desperate for illumination. Nothing happened. Panic surged as the whisper grew louder, more demanding. "Let me in!" I wanted to cry out, to demand to know what it wanted, but the words stuck in my throat. I needed to think. I fumbled around, feeling along the countertops for my phone. I remembered the footage, how it captured the terror hidden in the dark. That could help me find my way, or, at the very least, shine a light into the unknown. After what felt like an eternity, my fingers grazed the familiar shape of my phone. I tapped the screen, squinting at the brightness that blared to life. A soft glow illuminated just enough of the room that I could see the outlines of my furniture. But the flickering light couldn't chase away the shadows lurking at the edges. I scanned the room, heart still racing. I caught sight of it again. An indistinct figure huddled in the corner, just beyond the reach of the light. An urge to flee filled me, but I stood my ground, forcing myself to breathe. "Who's there?" I whispered, trying to muster courage. The rustling continued, just outside of the phone's glow. The figure shifted, and I could feel its gaze boring into me. I took a cautious step closer, desperate for clarity. It could be anyone, or anything. Then it spoke. The voice twisted and pushed through the stillness. "Help me!" I froze. The familiar pitch cut through the darkness. It sounded like John, the neighbor, but distorted, as if coming from some deep well of fear. "John?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Is that you?" The shadow seemed to jerk, displacing the darkness. It didn't respond. Instead, it crept further away, and as it did, I caught a glimpse of what it was. The outline of someone, something, but not entirely human. The unsettling way it moved made the hair on my neck stand tall. Suddenly, without warning, a loud crash resonated from above. My heart jolted again, adrenaline flooding my system. I swung my phone around, illuminating the room as I tried to decipher the source. "Hello? Is anyone up there?" I shouted, desperate to distract whatever was in front of me. A whisper returned, haunting in its persistence. "Let me in." And then it happened. The lights flickered back to life, casting a harsh glare through my apartment. I spun around to face the figure, but it had vanished. I was left with just the walls and my frantic breathing. I needed to find out what was happening. Gathering my thoughts, I moved toward the door. The urgency to open it clawed at me. The neighbor John might still be out there, but as I reached for the doorknob, a voice behind me shattered my resolve. "Don't open that door." I turned, heart racing. And that's when I realized I wasn't just dealing with shadows anymore. My pulse thrummed in my ears as I turned to face the voice. It came from a man who looked vaguely familiar, but was obscured by the thick shadows of the room. His eyes shone like little moons, reflecting the light from my phone. "Who are you?" I managed to ask, my voice trembling. "I'm someone who can help you," he said, taking a cautious step forward. "But you have to trust me." Trust him? My mind raced while I weighed my options. The figure I had seen moments prior and the unsettling whispers echoed in my thoughts. I wasn't even sure if he was a friend or another threat. "What do you mean, help?" "Help with what?" I pressed, staying close to the light. The idea of opening the door seemed distant, overshadowed by uncertainty. He nodded toward the door, where shadows seemed to swirling in anticipation. The thing that wants to come in is not just a shadow. It wants more than that. It seeks an invitation. An invitation? Confusion clouded my mind further. "What are you talking about? Who is it?" "That thing, whatever it is, has been feeding off fear. Your fear. I've seen it before." His voice dropped. "I was in your building a few nights ago. I thought I saw something in the corner of my eye, but couldn't quite catch it. Then I heard the whispers. Just then, a loud thud shook the floor above us, and I flinched. My instincts screamed at me to run, to get out, but my feet felt rooted in place. "Come on," he urged, stepping closer, but stopping just short of the light's edge. "We can't stay here. You need to listen to me if you want to stay safe." As much as fear clawed at me, a part of me wanted to know more. "You said you know this thing. How can you help?" "I have a way to banish it, but I need your trust. You can't hesitate." He took another step forward, the light flickering ominously around him. I need you to focus, to concentrate on your fear. Do this with me. Focus on what? My fear? I was fighting against a swirling whirlwind of emotions. The thought of facing that shadow again terrified me. Yes, it's the only way. Channel it, and we'll make it vulnerable. He seemed earnest, but how could I tell if he was genuine? Suddenly, the lights flickered again, casting elongated shadows that swayed as though someone were teasing them. The whisper grew louder, a chorus of desperate voices pleading, "Let us in! Let us in!" In that moment of tumult, I made a decision. "Okay," I said, heart racing. "I'll do it." The man's face brightened with determination. "Good. Now close your eyes. Picture your fear. Don't run from it. Bring it out." I squeezed my eyes shut, heart pounding in my chest. I could feel the darkness creeping closer, its weight pressing down on me. I imagined the shadow I had seen, its gaze boring through my mind. It wanted in. But this time, I wouldn't let it. "Let it all out," he urged, and as I did, I heard the whispers rise. And then a sudden, freezing silence enveloped the room. I opened my eyes. A figure stood close by, more vivid than before. That's when I saw it. The figure before me shimmered like a mirage, both real and unreal. It was tall, cloaked in an inky darkness that seemed to swallow the light around it. My heart felt like it was stuck in my throat. This was it, the thing the man had warned me about. "No!" I screamed, stepping back instinctively. The voice in my head screamed at me to run, but I was frozen, riveted in place. "Breathe!" the man said urgently, his voice cutting through the panic. "Channel your fear into strength. It feeds off your terror." The shadow flickered, twisting into contorted shapes, almost as if it was mimicking my fear. I could see eyes, dark, hollow, and all-consuming, glowing like embers in the night. The whispers were stronger now, an echoing chant that wrapped around my ears, drawing me in. I squeezed my eyes shut again, the images dancing in my mind, but it was hard to concentrate. "What do I do?" My voice wavered, tinged with desperation. "Imagine your fear as a tangible thing. Visualize it. Now take back your power." His voice was steady, a lifeline in the chaos. I focused harder, trying to see beyond the panic. I imagined the shadow, its breath hot against my skin, but I thought of how it would feel to expel it, to take control. I pictured myself standing strong, fists clenched, shouting it down. The shadow surged forward, a rush of cold air engulfing me. A rush of instinct kicked in. I shouted with all my might, "Leave me alone!" In that moment, the atmosphere shifted. The darkness recoiled slightly. It swayed back, as if I had struck it. The whispers faltered, diminishing in intensity. There was power in my voice, a power I didn't know I had. "Good! Again!" the man encouraged. The shadow paused, its form flickering, revealing the twisted shapes of faces, contorted in torment. I could feel its fear of me. "Bring it out!" he yelled, his voice rising with urgency. "Get out!" I shouted, pushing my thoughts outward, imagining a bright light breaking through the layer of darkness. "You don't belong here!" it shrieked, a sound that pierced my ears, a vibration of pure fear. The room trembled as if the very walls were shaking with it. For a moment, I thought it would explode, consume everything in its grasp. Suddenly, the figure dissipated, vanishing into wisps of smoke that faded before my eyes. The whispers turned to hushed sobs, then quieted completely. I gasped, the gravity of what had just happened sinking in. "Did it work?" I asked, trembling. "It's not gone yet," the man replied, scanning the room with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "We need to reinforce the space." "What do you mean? Reinforce how?" I was still panting, adrenaline coursing through me. "We need to close the connection. There's no time to explain. The fear will linger. Follow me," he instructed, moving toward a corner of the room where the shadows seemed deeper. As he spoke, though, I couldn't shake the feeling that something else was at play. A chill ran down my spine. I looked to the door. Wait, what if it comes back? That's why we need to act fast, he insisted. Then, the light flickered again, throwing erratic shadows across the walls. Another noise came from upstairs, but this was different. It echoed like a knock, a persistent urging. My breath caught. Someone, or something, was in the house. I turned to face the man, panic creeping back into my chest. Did you hear that? He nodded, tension tightening his jaw. We need to hurry. If it's back, it could mean the connection still exists. I hesitated, eyeing the door. What if it's not the shadow? What if it's something worse? His eyes narrowed. We can't afford to find out. Trust me. With one last glance at the door, I followed him to the far corner of the room. The shadows there felt different, thicker, darker. It confused me, made me question if I had truly expelled the figure or just sent it into hiding. Help me with this, the man said, revealing a small vial filled with glimmering salt. He poured a thin line on the floor, creating a barrier. This will help keep it out. What about upstairs? I asked. The noise echoed again, a sound that distinctly resembled footsteps. My heart raced with each thud. Focus on this. We can't let anything through, he stressed, his hands moving quickly. I knelt beside him, pouring salt in sync with his movements. The room grew colder with every grain that fell. I felt my resolve fizzling like the shadows I had just battled. But the knock came again, louder this time, almost as if it was slamming against the wall. I shot to my feet. We have to check it. It could be someone in danger. No, he snapped. It's not safe. We're in danger here. Just then, the shadows at the window began to writhe and pulse. The light flickered again, illuminating the outlines of something large outside. Fear gripped me, freezing me in place. Suddenly, the door creaked open an inch, just enough for a sliver of darkness to slip inside. I raced to it, my hand gripping the doorknob before I could think. Don't, the man shouted, lunging forward to grab my arm. We have to close it. But curiosity and fear entwined, pushing me to crack the door open further. That's when I saw it. A figure stood at the top of the stairwell. It was hunched and lurking, its features obscured. I barely caught a glimpse before it disappeared into the darkness once more. Did you see that? I gasped, adrenaline surging through me. Yes, he said, his voice grave. And now, we really need to act. If it's looking for you, it means it knows you're strong. It's drawn to your power. Strong? I barely managed to face it once, I said, doubt threading through my mind. Exactly. So use that strength. We can counter it together, but we have to close that door. As I backed away, darting to the door, a shriek pierced the air, an angry wail filled with despair and rage. My heart dropped. What is that? It's feeding. We don't have much time. With shaking hands, I slammed the door shut, but it felt like the air was charged with an electric pulse, a sinister threat lingering just outside. We pressed against the door together, panting. But then I looked at him, dread pooling in my stomach. What if it gets in? The shadows around us shifted again, deeper this time, and then everything went dark. I blinked, the darkness swallowing everything. Panic clawed at my throat. The sound of my breathing echoed too loud in the silence. I felt the man's grip on my arm tighten, and I turned towards him, trying to discern his expression in the gloom. We need light, he said, urgency creeping into his voice. Find the flashlight. I stumbled back, my hands outstretched, desperately searching the shelves lining the walls. My fingers brushed against cold metal, and I snatched up the flashlight. I clicked it on, the beam cutting through the shadow like a knife. Point it at the door, he instructed, his gaze fixed on the wood as if it were a barrier against a relentless tide. I aimed the light, trying to keep my hand steady. The door looked ordinary, but the shadows around it loomed larger and more threatening. In the stillness, I felt an unsettling shift. a pressure building, as if the very air was alive with anticipation. A low growl emanated from behind the door, sending chills down my spine. "Do you hear that?" I whispered, unable to hide the quiver in my voice. "Yes," he said, eyes darting as if assessing our surroundings. "It's the entity. It's trying to find a way in." My vision flickered around the room. The once familiar space had transformed into a pressure cooker of fear and desperation. "What do we do?" He took a deep breath, his face steadying. "We have to gather our strength. Your power is tied to emotions. You need to confront it head on. We can't hide, not anymore. Confront." The word echoed in my mind. I had barely managed to fend it off last time, and it had hurt me, hurt us. The thought of facing it again made my chest tighten. But what if I fail? Failure isn't an option. We need to draw it out. Before I could protest, he moved back towards the door. "We need to provoke it, make it come after us. It's afraid of what we can do if we combine our strength." A knot twisted in my stomach. The idea of luring the thing closer felt like playing with fire. "You want me to taunt it?" "Precisely. If it's connected to you, it wants to find you. We leverage that." Another guttural sound rumbled outside, mingled with a whispering hiss. "We need to act now." I grasped the flashlight tightly and nodded, though doubt still clung to me like shadows. "On 3, he said. 1, 2... "Wait!" I blurted, something catching in my throat. "If we open the door and it comes in, what do we do next?" "Trust your instinct," he said, his voice commanding, "and stay close." The air felt electric, charged with danger. I clutched the flashlight, each beat of my heart echoing in the silence. He counted down. 3. With a deep breath, I turned the knob. The door creaked open slowly, revealing the faint outline of the stairwell. I aimed the light into the darkness, the beam trembling, and then I saw it, a pair of glowing eyes staring back at us. In that heartbeat, all rational fear melted away. I stepped forward, a sudden rush of warmth igniting my resolve. "Show yourself!" I shouted, my voice unwavering, and that's when the shadows lunged. The moment the shadows lunged, time slowed. I caught a glimpse of that dark figure twisting and reshaping itself, an entity formed from fear and desperation, rushing toward me like a hurricane. The air crackled with an otherworldly energy as my heart raced, the pounding echoing in my ears. "Now!" the man shouted beside me, his voice cutting through the chaos. I raised the flashlight high, the beam slicing through the shadowy mass. For a split second, the light revealed its ghastly form, eyes like glowing coals, its mouth stretching into an unnatural grin. An instinct kicked in. This was no longer a fleeting specter haunting the corners of my mind. This was the embodiment of everything I had feared, a palpable threat that sought to engulf me whole. "Get back!" I shouted, pushing against the blackness with a feigned courage. I could feel its pull, an invisible force trying to drag me into its depths, but I stood firm, channeling every ounce of fear into a raw, visceral determination. "Focus on your power," he urged again, his voice steady and unwavering despite the escalating tension. "Remember the strength you wield. You're not powerless." I locked my gaze on the thing before me, fury swelling in my chest. "You don't control me?" I yelled, the echo of my defiance swirling around us. A shriek erupted from the figure, a sound unlike anything I'd ever heard, a blend of anguish and rage that rattled my bones. It recoiled slightly, the shadows rippling with its every movement. "Now push it back," the man cried. And I did. I focused on the light, imagining it as a shield, a barrier against the darkness that threatened to consume me. I sent forth the beam with renewed intensity, anchoring my will on a truth I refused to ignore. I was alive, I had the light, and I would not back down. As if answering my call, the shadows twisted and snarled, losing their coherence. The whispers swelled into a cacophony, urging me to give in, to succumb to the fear. but in spirit I stood taller as the light blazed brighter and brighter, forcing the shadows to writhe and dissipate like smoke caught in a gust of wind. "Don't relent, keep pushing," he yelled, his own resolve buoying me. In that moment, I let go, a release of fear, anger, and everything that had dragged me down. Then something snapped inside me, a newfound clarity that surged like a tide. "This ends now," I bellowed, unleashing every ounce of energy I had left. Shadows fought back, wrapping around my limbs, but how could I falter? I was no longer alone. The man beside me drew strength from my resolve, and together we forged a wall against the darkness. In one final scream, the figure exploded outward, retreating and unraveling into thin air. An icy chill swept through the room, and I fell backward, gasping for breath. But as the chaos subsided, I propped myself up to see the remnants of the darkness fading, swallowed by the brilliance of the light. Relief washed over me. It could barely be comprehended. "Did we do it?" I breathed, bewildered by the sudden silence enveloping us. The man remained alongside me, his eyes scanning the now still room. "For now, but understand, it won't stay away indefinitely. It'll find a way back." My heart sank at the thought. What do we do now? How do we stop it from returning? He looked at me with muted concern. "You understand where it was born, your fear. You must confront it time and time again. Strengthen the light within you. It's a battle you may have to face repeatedly, but together." His voice trailed off, and the weight of what we had just done pressed heavily upon us. There remained the echoes of uncertainty, lingering threads of darkness I couldn't so easily dismiss. I could still feel that shadow looming in the back of my mind, a visceral reminder that what I'd tapped into could yield power and fear in equal measure. Can I stay here?" I stammered, half pleading. He nodded, teetering on the edge of understanding. "Together we can watch over this place. You're not alone anymore, but be vigilant because the fear can return when least expected." Just then, the door handle rattled ominously, sending a paralyzing chill to my bones. The faint fabric of darkness slipped back, an unwelcome visitor just beyond the threshold. "Your invitation must be absolute," he warned, raising the vial of salt high, still glowing in darkness. "Are you ready to stand united?" I nodded, steeling myself for whatever would come next. Deep down, I knew I hadn't escaped the darkness entirely, and perhaps this was just the beginning. As I stood there, shoulder to shoulder with my new ally, I realized I would face whatever lay ahead. But before I could open the door, there would always be questions lingering, scratching at the edges of reality, refusing to fade.